I am sitting in her chair. It's a wingback, upholstered in a floral brocade that has faded from a vibrant rose to a ghostly, dusty pink. To anyone else, it's just furniture, but to me, it is her chair. The fabric still yields to the memory of her weight, a gentle, permanent depression in the cushion, where she would curl up for hours, the spine of a well-worn novel cracking softly as she sipped chamomile tea. Elanor passed away 3 years ago, on a Tuesday morning in March. I remember the air that day. It was crisp, carrying the sharp cold scent of melting snow and damp earth. Outside the window, the daffodils were just beginning to pierce through the frost, their yellow heads nodding like tiny silent bells. She loved them. I never told her that I spent a back-breaking weekend in the autumn of 1987, planting 500 bulbs in that garden bed just for her. I let her believe they were wild, a gift from nature itself. That was my first great error, the arrogant assumption that time was a renewable resource, and that I could always tell her the truth, later. Now, at 92, my bones feel like dry kindling, and my skin like parchment. If there is one specter that haunts the hallways of this long, creaking life, it isn't a ghost of what was said. It's the crushing weight of the unsaid. The words that turn to light in my chest. The sentences I meticulously polished in the silence of my mind, while she breathed softly in the sleep of the innocent beside me. I never gave those words breath. Today, I am speaking them to you, through the veil of my own regret, because the clock in your hallway is ticking just as loudly as mine, and perhaps you still have the chance to bridge the silence before it becomes eternal. Elanor and I collided in the sweltering humidity of July 1955. I was 21, radiating the misplaced confidence of the post-war boom, my hair slicked back with enough pomade to catch the light like a mirror. I had a chip on my shoulder the size of a continental divide. She was 18, a vision in a lemon-yellow sundress that seemed to drink in the afternoon sun and turn it into liquid gold. We were at a local church picnic. I wasn't there for the sermon, only for the promise of free fried chicken and the chance to escape the stifling heat of my father's garage. I saw her standing under a sprawling white oak, her voice rising in a spirited melodic debate with her sister over the merits of Jane Austen's characters. She was arguing that Elizabeth Bennet was a fool for her pride, yet a genius for her heart. I didn't know a thing about 19th century literature. I only knew that when she laughed, it sounded like silver wind chimes caught in a summer gale. I approached her with my hands shoved deep into my pockets, trying to affect an air of cool indifference that I didn't feel. My heart was thumping against my ribs like a trapped bird. "So," I said, my voice cracking with the elegance of a gravel road, "who is this Darcy fellow? Should I be looking for a fight?" She turned, her green eyes, vivid as moss after a rain, sparkling with a mixture of sharp wit and genuine amusement. "Only if you're as insufferably proud and brooding as he is," she countered. I flashed a grin. "I'm significantly worse." She offered a slow, devastating smile, the kind that anchors a man's soul to the earth. "Good," she whispered. "I've always preferred a challenge." We were wed 10 months later. The air in the chapel was thick with the cloying sweetness of lilies and the metallic tang of a radiator that had seen better days. It was a small affair. 1956 was a year of modest beginnings. Her mother wept into a lace handkerchief. My father, true to form, had sought courage in a flask of rye before the processional. When I looked at Elanor at the altar, she looked back at me as if I were the final piece of a puzzle she hadn't realized was incomplete. When the minister gave the command, I kissed her with a desperation that suggested the world might dissolve the moment our lips parted. She leaned in and breathed into my ear. "Don't ever stop doing that." I promised her never. But the tragedy of a long life is how easily and never can be eroded by the slow drip of the mundane. I didn't stop the act of kissing her, but I stopped the devotion of it. I allowed the miracle of her presence to become a background noise, like the hum of a refrigerator or the ticking of a clock. If I could reach through the screen and grab you by the shoulders, I would tell you this. I wish I had told her every single morning that she was the singular best decision of my life. Not just on the milestone anniversaries marked by silver or gold, but on the rainy Mondays when the coffee was burnt and the car wouldn't start. Because it was the truth. Every contract I signed, every promotion I called for, every bit of status I accumulated in the cutthroat world of mid-century business, it was all ash compared to the fact that she chose to walk beside me. I was a stubborn, emotionally illiterate man who mistook providing for loving. I thought that by shackling myself to a mahogany desk for 70 hours a week, I was building a monument to my affection. I was convinced that a sprawling suburban house with a modern kitchen and a two-car garage was the ultimate I love you. I was catastrophically, heartbreakingly wrong. Elanor didn't want the crown moldings or the imported drugs. She wanted the man who had disappeared behind the newspaper and the balance sheet. She wanted my eyes on hers, not on my wristwatch. She wanted me to notice the way she hummed when she gardened, or to dance with her in the kitchen to a scratchy jazz record, even if I felt like a bumbling fool. She wanted a partner who listened to the subtext of her day, not a provider who merely nodded while calculating the next quarter's projections. There is one memory from 1982 that sits in my mind like a jagged shard of glass. It was a Tuesday in November. The house smelled of slow-roasted pot roast, rosemary, and caramelized onions, the scent of a home meticulously cared for. She had set the table with the good linens and lit two tapered candles, their flames dancing in the draught. I stumbled through the door at 9:30, my tie loosened like a noose, my mind a frantic hive of litigation and logistics. She was sitting there in the dim light, the food cold and congealed, the candles melted down into misshapen lumps of wax. She didn't scream, she didn't throw a plate. She simply looked at me with eyes that were drowning in a quiet, profound disappointment. "Frank," she said softly, "I'm here. I'm still right here." I gave her a cursory kiss on the cheek, muttered an apology about a closing deal, and promised that tomorrow would be different. But tomorrow was a carbon copy of today. I treated her constancy like oxygen, essential, but entirely invisible. I lived under the grand delusion that I had an infinite supply of tomorrows. I assumed time was a patient waiter who would stand by until I was finally ready to sit down and feast on the life I had built. But time is a thief, and it moves with a silence that is terrifying. It doesn't care about your career goals or your retirement plans. It just evaporates. In the autumn of her 79th year, the invisible oxygen was suddenly thin. Pancreatic cancer. The word sounded like a death knell in the sterile white room of the oncologist's office. They gave her 6 months. Her sheer will dragged that out to 11. In those final 11 months, I finally retired. I walked away from the firm without a backward glance. Decades too late. I became her shadow. I learned the choreography of her pain, the exact moment to offer a sip of water or a cool cloth. I attempted to cook for her, producing scorched offerings that she would graciously critique with a weak smile, telling me I had a unique relationship with salt. I read to her until my voice went hoarse, revisiting the Elizabeth Bennet she had defended under that oak tree so many lifetimes ago. I held her hand, feeling the skin grow thin and translucent like a fallen leaf. and I realized that the weight of her palm in mine was the only metric of success that had ever truly mattered. I had spent 60 years chasing shadows, while the sun was standing right in front of me. 3 days before the end, the March wind was rattling the window panes. Elanor was a fraction of her former self, her body a fragile cage, but her eyes were still that piercing, mossy green. She looked at me through a haze of morphine and whispered, "Frank." I broke then. I didn't just cry, I shuddered. The sobs were violent, ugly things that had been bottled up since 1955. I should have been there, I choked out. I should have told you every single day how much you were worth. She squeezed my hand with a strength that shouldn't have been possible. "Tell me now," she said, and so I did. For hours I poured out the contents of my soul. I told her that she was more beautiful with silver hair and a face etched by time than she had been in that yellow sundress. I told her that her laugh was the only music I ever wanted to hear. I apologized for every late night, every cold dinner, and every time I chose a ledger over her heart. I told her that if the universe offered me 1,000 lifetimes, I would spend every single one of them searching for her, and in the next one, I would do it better. I told her I loved her until the words lost their meaning and became a pulse. "I love you, I love you, I love you." She smiled, a tiny flickering thing, like a candle in a cavern. "I know," she whispered. Her final words to me, spoken with the last of her breath, as the sun began to bleed over the horizon, were, "Now, don't forget." She died 17 hours later. The room was silent, save for the distant song of a robin and the sight of those daffodils I had planted in secret, finally blooming in full, defiant yellow outside the glass. I haven't forgotten, but I live every hour with the stinging knowledge that I gave her 72 hours of truth to balance against the 67 years of silence. That is a hole in my heart that no amount of memory can fill. So I am telling you, do not wait for the diagnosis. Do not wait for the right time or the perfect moment. There is no such thing. There is only now. If you love someone, if they are the reason your world has color, tell them. Tell them with the ferocity of a man who knows the clock is broken. Don't let your pride or your busy schedule turn your heart into a tomb for the things they need to hear. Elanor rests under a sprawling oak in a quiet corner of the county cemetery. I go there every week, my joints complaining at the track. I bring fresh daffodils when they're in season, and I sit on the grass, feeling the dampness seep into my trousers. I talk to the headstone. I tell her about the world she missed, and I tell her I love her. Sometimes when the wind kicks up the scent of pine and old earth, I can almost hear that silver chime laugh of hers telling me she's listening. But the stone doesn't hug me back. The glass doesn't hold my hand. So here is the question I leave for you, the one that should keep you awake tonight. Who in your life is currently invisible to you? Who are you assuming will always be there to catch your coat and hear your excuses? Go to them. Don't wait for the end of this video, and don't worry about sounding poetic, just be honest. Because I would trade every cent of my pension and every accolade on my wall for just one more mundane, boring Tuesday morning with Elanor. One more chance to say I love you while she could still hear it with her own ears. I am 92 years old, and my time is short. I am here as a messenger from the future you don't want. Don't be the man sitting in an empty chair, talking to a ghost. Love them out loud. Love them while the sun is still up. Because once the sun goes down, the silence is very, very long. So tell me in the comments, who is the person you've been taking for granted, and what are you going to say to them tonight to make sure they know they are your world?